more. Fact is, I've seen many people scream about the cliffhangers and then eagerly say, I can't wait for the next one. People were saying this, but the TV show is interesting. They were following many of his cliffhangers.
Yeah.
And the way they broke up the TV show. And it...
Because they are very effective.
They're very effective.
Yeah.
So, you may hate them, but they're a very good strategy.
I mean, I think it's natural to some extent that you're going to hate the fact that even if you love the writing and even if you love the book and everything, you're going to, oh my god, I am going to have to wait several years to learn about this, because there's no avoiding. These books are large, they do take a long time to write, even if it's going to most likely flow much more smoothly now.
Yeah. Actually, let's discuss some of the characters. And now, there are a number of new point of views. We're not going to discuss those in any great detail. I'll say one of them was a point of view that I always wanted, but I'm always sure that if this person became a point of view that they would die. I'm not going to tell you what happens. There's also a character that is sort of briefly introduced as a point of view character that is now Linda's favorite character.
Alongside with Danny, I would say, but it's definitely, I was very happy to read this point of view chapter. I thought it was fascinating and offered some interesting insights without revealing too much, but it certainly added another layer to the story.
And I think one of the 3 chapters that are most vivid in my memory belong to yet another new point of view, and it's the command of atmosphere and of character, the raising of the stakes, the building of tension. George, it's like a masterclass. I'm sure there are writers who are going to be breaking it out. How did he do this? Of course, the biggest moment of all happens, or in some senses, is in a Danny chapter, and that one, wow, I'm very interested to see how people respond to it, because for me, it was one of those moments where I was reading it before Linda, and she could hear me going silent. And when I go silent,
something is up.
Something is up. There's no question that George still has all the powers of a great writer at his grasp, as a storyteller, which is what David Benioff and Dan Weiss and HBO call him. He was a master storyteller. It's laid out here perfectly.
Yeah.
Are there things that are a problem? Well,
I think we talked about this the other day, and you said that in Feast for Crows you feel that there is perhaps one chapter that could have been taken out.
Yeah.
Brienne's chapter in Duskin.
Exactly.
You feel that maybe that was a little indulgent and not quite sure
why
it was there. On the other end, this one you felt that maybe some could be tightened up a little bit, but not really taken out. That there are some of the Danny chapters, people may be a little frustrated before they get to the big payoff with Danny. I suppose particularly if they're not a fan of Danny. I mean, I'm a fan of Danny, and I certainly enjoyed these chapters, but there is a sense of it building over several chapters, so you do have to be a little patient there, but boy, the payoff is worth it.
Yeah,
and not just with the chapter that Elio was just mentioning, which is the big one. There's another one as well, which is probably my favorite chapter in the whole book, because it has a quality to it that I really enjoy with the series, and it is the more magical, the more different perspectives, and that chapter had a lot of it.
Yeah, there's a certain sense, I put it, a little bit of having to hold Danny's story in place for a little while until he finally was ready to go for his key moment. And for those who follow the book closely, the Myronese knot is a big part of it. How to time all these arrivals at Marine, how to time the key events in relation to him, how do these events change if he changes the order of arrivals. Which
is why one of the point of views
was
introduced
to help cover that.
He needed somebody who gave a certain perspective on the story at a particular point.
So there is a little bit of that. So, but after 600, if you're really looking for some strong plot beats, you're going to get plenty. I mean, he's packed more into it than some authors will pack into into that section than into the whole book.
The whole series in some cases.
In some cases, yes, exactly. Characters. This book is, just by chapter count, it's Tyrion's story, it's Jon's story, it's Dany's story. They are the 3 predominant characters. I would say
a lot of the others relate to them in some fashion.
I think over a third of the book is just to them, and then you have a bunch of others. My favorite chapters are probably, I would say in some cases are two of the new point of view characters, which is a pretty interesting thing to think about. But
he's so good at introducing a character like that we've had, in some case, more information about, in another case, relatively little information about, and then just really making you get into these chapters and...
Yeah. As far as mysteries and surprises and things that are revealed and hinted at, it's really interesting. We had a recent opportunity to talk with George, and one of the things I asked him about is how close has his master plan sort of remained the same? How much has it shifted? And he said the only real change is the 5-year gap. He always intended the 5-year gap. Dropping it has led him to having to come up with stuff to fill it in a way that he hadn't originally intended.
No.
But the major beats of the story, the major key moments, the landmarks on the road that he knew he was going to get to,
they're all there still.
They're all there still.
And they were planned.
Yes. We were trying to get a sense of how long ago he planned some of these things.
Yeah. Because there's one particular introduction or revelation that we thought that, well, he knew he was going to reveal that it was someone, but did he always know who the someone was? And he says yes.
Yeah, that we were sure, because we've communicated with George a while. Way back in 98, 99, he sent us some notes of sort of history, and it was the first introduction.
Because we happened to be interested in a particular period because we were setting our game there, and he happened to have some notes on it. Yeah,
he shared it to us, and there was characters he never mentioned until the second
Duncan Egg
novel, and A Storm of Swords as well. Things related to the Blackfire, the Targaryens, things happening in the East, and things. And so I thought then, but no, he said 94, 95 is when he started, which is mind-boggling that he has had these ideas nearly 20 years now,
and
ready.
Finally getting them coming out and getting the payoff for them,
So
because it's quite a payoff when we got to the revelation of this particular mystery. It was incredibly satisfying. We were both very
seats,
giddy.
I think, basically, yes.
That was like Christmas. When we realized what he was setting up from the description. Yeah.
There's a lot of little...
Which is one of these things where I feel that, if you're going to be reading this, I tend to be one of those people who often flips to the end of a book, particularly if I'm nervous about what's going to happen to a character. But this one, you really want to experience it as you read. You don't want to be spoiled.
That was a benefit, wasn't it? Getting it piecemeal as we did when we were reading it.
Because you couldn't. I couldn't. Nope, I couldn't.
So that's great. Because it really is a book where it's very deliberately paced, and George has very carefully selected the order of chapters to try and maximize
the effect of these moments.
So if there's anything you can do just to avoid being spoiled, if there's anything you can do to avoid going to the back, and I should say, it has been pointed out, don't bother looking at the appendix right now. There is a spoiler, because it's something that happens. George has done anything that happens in like the first half of his books, he'll actually note them in the appendices at the end, with the assumption that the appendices will be looked at by people after they're done.
And so don't use that as your refresher for the characters. Use the previous,
a piece of prose appendices should be just fine, and it will preserve the mystery for you of some things. There's a lot of interesting movements. There's a lot of character development. I think some people will probably be surprised by Tyrion's story. Now, it's interesting, as you say, Tyrion's not your favorite, but you said that you actually liked him more in this one.
Yes, I tend to have some problems with some of the hardness of Tyrion's character, in that he feels a little... To me, he comes across as a little shallow and flippant. And I don't quite like how he interacts with other people and how he uses other people. It's entirely understandable, given his situation and everything, but he has rubbed me the wrong way. In A Dance for Dragons, he starts out in a very bad place, emotionally speaking. He's not dealing well with what has happened to him. And I mean, he shouldn't. He's been through an awful lot, and for me it made him, I could relate more to him.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have this expectation. For them, what he does at the end of Storm of Swords are like great, fantastic moments. They've been waiting all this time for Tywin Lannister to, die. They wanted...
They don't think about the cost, Tyrion.
Yeah, they don't think about the cost. They wanted Shae to die after she betrayed him.
Yeah.
But by doing it himself, it's not something that leaves him unconflicted or happy, and he's like, I'm so badass, on to the next adventure. These are troubling things, and it would be untrue to the character that George has written to have it dealt with flippantly and in a shallow fashion.
Yeah.
So the first part of Tyrion is a Tyrion who is a damaged, emotionally crippled person who's struggling with what he's done and what to do with himself.
The cost of actions is a theme of the novel, I feel. That there's a lot of characters, there are some who reflect on, the cost of doing certain things and whether it's worth pursuing, and others who think about what it has cost others and how the bad effects that certain decisions have had. So it's a lot about regrets and looking back on difficult decisions or hasty decisions and all of these things. And I mean, Tyrion's chapters have a very bleak atmosphere to start with, and certainly a lot of George's writing as a horror writer comes out in Tyrion's chapters, and also in one of the other point of views, which was very difficult to read. Those were harrowing chapters. I don't know how often I would want to reread those chapters, because they're so well done in being absolutely horrific.